San Francisco is in massive trouble, guys, because one of the biggest revenues for many cities around the world, from Hong Kong to New York City, is going to be real estate. Like, for example, Hong Kong makes a lot of money from foreign transactions, taxing foreigners a 30% stamp duty. Same thing in New York City. Every single transaction, there's extra taxes, extra city tax on it, and it's just very, very profitable. And you may be asking, then why do people buy real estate there? Well, because it's Hong Kong and New York City. People want to buy in these areas. Just like Australia, if you go to Sydney, Melbourne, there's like a 7% stamp duty tax. Singapore has a 60% stamp duty tax. So if you have all these different taxes, real estate, of course, is very profitable. And in big cities like San Francisco, they're very smart. They have these things called like these transfer taxes, right? So not a lot of people are playing the real estate market in San Francisco, whereas other parts of the country, real estate is actually pretty hot. Look at some of the prices of San Francisco real estate, you get an idea of how bad it is. Many units in the San Francisco area are down bad. They're super low in price, and some of these units where it's pretty massive are getting some big price cuts. Like during the peak of San Francisco real estate, prices were way higher than this. You would not find this unit, for example, for a little over $1 million. It would have been like $1.3, $1.4 million easy. But now the listing price is actually an overprice. If you look at the actual transactions, it's whatever the listing price is, add another 20% off. And that's what you're seeing here, right? Everyone is done. People don't want to be here. We're seeing San Francisco just dropping like a rock. Very few home sales. And don't even get me started to the offices. Offices are even worse because many of the offices are selling for pennies on the dollar, with the latest transaction being Wells Fargo's office listed for $160 million and only sold for a little over $40 million. And the city's haul of $186 million is very little. It's actually the lowest since the Great Recession. Now, if you check this out, just last year, right? Just in like 2020 or 2021 or 2021 to 2022, those were still pretty bad real estate times, but at least they generated a little over $500 million. But if you look at 22 and 23's year, you do see that it was only $168 million being collected. Now, for 2023 to 2024, people are saying it's even worse because this year's transactions are way lower than last year's transaction. Because this year's transactions, there's not a lot of buyers, and when there are buyers, the prices of a lot of these buildings aren't even exceeding like $200 million per building. And that's very low for a high-end, first-tier, high-caliber city like San Francisco. So we're seeing the revenues being cut this much, right? Imagine getting like a little $500 million to a little under $200 million. And for this year, it may be even worse. In fact, San Francisco is losing so much money on real estate. They were actually refusing people to get a property tax cut. People are really mad because if you look at a lot of these buildings in downtown, several of these buildings are now selling for pennies on the dollar, right? Several of these buildings aren't even worth as much anymore. But San Francisco is reluctant. They don't want to lower the property tax, and landlords are super angry. In decades, this is the first time when there's record appeals for the city to just lower the property tax. The city isn't doing it. And just to make things worse, the city is actually increasing the building inspection fee by 15% due to rising costs, whatever that means. But one thing's for certain, landlords are pretty mad about this whole San Francisco situation, because the reason why people don't want to be here is because like the crazy amounts of shoplifting, right? You got a lot of car theft, a lot of shoplifting. You have homeless people on the streets. You have tents on the streets. It looks like this all the time in San Francisco. I mean, this is probably the reason why a lot of people didn't want to go back. It's constant, guys. San Francisco is by far one of the worst places to be in the U.S. So many abandoned retailers. Uniqlo has left. The biggest mall has left. And Nordstrom has left. It's basically like a whole entire Detroit 2.0 situation. And look at this, right? And you're also not decreasing property tax. You know, inspection fees are more higher. Maintenance fees are higher. Property tax may even be raised this year. And we're also seeing a lot of canceled projects, which are supposed to generate record amounts of revenue for San Francisco, because when you develop a massive skyscraper, the city gets a massive cut. And afterwards, the city makes a lot of money from the property tax from it. And with this building supposed to have like over 300 condos, and almost 300,000 square feet of office space and 70,000 square feet of amenities. Yeah, the city is licking their lips, wanting to tax the crap out of it. But now, because this Australian developer is pausing the project, the city is pretty much running out of money. They can't even rely on this capital. And the reason why they're pretty much halting it is the street conditions in San Francisco are absolutely terrible. Not to mention, why would you ever buy a piece of land and build a tower on it when you could just purchase a foreclosed building right next to you? Because the building that's right next to this development is going to be NEMA. They're about to default on a $400 million loan. It's a luxury apartment skyscraper, and the reason why they can't afford it is because of one thing: not enough renters. They couldn't get enough people to pay like 3 racks for a 1-bedroom. So now they're actually suffering. They're going to be closing down pretty soon. Can't even pay their really just normal everyday things like property tax and staff and home insurance. So NEMA is one of the biggest examples and the more extreme examples of housing foreclosures in San Francisco, but there's just so many more, right? So many of these smaller buildings are actually being foreclosed, and if you just go to downtown, many of these buildings that you see here are not currently listed for sale, but their value themselves have decreased dramatically. People have also argued that there's just too many companies leaving San Francisco at this point. It's probably unrecoverable for San Francisco. It's pretty sad because San Francisco is honestly one of my favorite places in the US. The architecture of the buildings, the climate, and also the culture of the place is fantastic. But now, with so many of the tech gone, this is no longer a place where it's lit anymore. With so much tech gone, it's pretty much a ghost town at this point. If you just go watch some of the 4K walking tours in San Francisco, you notice a huge difference between like the 2018 and 2019 clips and the 2023 clips. The 2023 clips show off that the place is just completely vacant. It's actually freaky to see this kind of situation here. So we're going to see more of this, all right? And we're going to be seeing even more of project foreclosures because we're also seeing the metropolitan area of San Francisco and the rest of the Bay Area having one of the lowest new apartment construction in decades. Yes, not just in a few months, in decades. There's barely any construction left, okay? And we ever see like condo developers who make like a little condo building of like 20-ish units. They get foreclosed because it can't even sell a single unit. And it was actually in like a good part of San Francisco. So we're seeing this all the time. It's pretty bad, okay? And San Francisco is like, we're going to make more new housing units to get the pricing down. But I don't even think they need to make housing units at this point because so many people have left the city. They could just pretty much rely on their current stock. So it's crazy to see that San Francisco just genuinely just doesn't really care about the street conditions. You can't just have homeless people in tents on the streets. Have that long enough for a few years and this is what happens. Construction declines, revenue declines, and the city is slowly going through a doom spiral. Now, the only city I'll ever go to is San Diego because they're actually handling all that situation stuff pretty well. I think San Francisco should just do what San Diego's doing, but that's pretty dramatic change, and I'm not even sure if San Francisco could do it. I feel like the city's just too undecisive recently, and this is what's causing this massive doom loop. It's going to be worse, guys. Revenue from real estate is basically non-existent for San Francisco, whereas places like New York City, Miami, and Austin, they're dancing.